Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having fun at home. The teachers and I really miss you. Again, this is Miss Tanya with Country Hill Montessori, and I would like to read a book to you, and it's called Extra Yarn. It's written by Barnett and illustrated, or the pictures are by John Clausen. All right, let's get started. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with a yarn of every color. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars, too. But there was still extra yarn. Mars is her doggie. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. There's Nate. But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog, and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet!" shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone! Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But guess what? But it turned out she could, and she did. Even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, for Mr. Pendleton, for Mrs. Pendleton, for Dr. Palmer, for little Louie. She made sweaters for everyone, except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats and all the other animals too. Soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. Look, she made a sweater for the mailbox. She made a sweater for the birdhouse, and even for the little birdie, and for the houses. Wow. Things began to change in that little town. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, Archduke, who was very fond of clothes, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. Demanded. "Little girl," said the Archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1 million. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The Archduke's mustache twitched. $2 million, he said. Annabelle shook her head. No, thank you. 10 million, he shouted. Take it or leave it. Leave it, said Annabelle. I won't sell you the yarn. And she didn't. I wonder what the Archduke is going to do. So that night, the Archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house. And they took the box. And they took it to the Archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the seas back to his castle. The Archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted his lid and he looked inside. His mustache quivered. It shivered. It trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out of the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." Look what was in the box. No yarn. But do you think his curse worked? It turned out she was happy. The end. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, extra yarn.